Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mile High Sports Symposium. I am JT Matthews at JT Matthews01 on Twitter, and I'm here, X, and I'm here with the doctor, Nicholas Manning at DR_N Manning on X. Doc, how are you doing? You guys just got back from a long vacay. Was it everything you hoped? Was it as bucket filling as you would like?
Yes.
It's a long pot.
It was good. We went camping.
Oh,
Me
I can't
and
hear
the
you all of a sudden.
in-laws and all of. Uh-oh, that's not great. Hold, please.
Hello. Can you hear me? Or can I hear? I can't hear you.
I can hear you. Let's see.
Perfect time for technical difficulties when we're live. That's all right. I'm hoping other people can hear me. If the doc can hear me, I'm not sure. We were just talking, so
I can hear.
Not sure what
I
happened
can
there.
hear you.
We'll keep going until you can just keep testing too. I'll just keep talking until we can get you, because I'm not sure what happened. But like I was saying, Doc got back from vacay. My family was all there. I had to stay back because of some PTO. But they had a nice time with some family out in New York, upstate. Shout out to any upstate New York people. But yeah, we are excited to be back, talk about some Denver sports, see, get some interaction, see how everyone's feeling. It's the summer. It's a little bit of a slow period for kind of your main sports, all except for baseball, which we're not talking about because there's nothing to talk about when it comes to the Colorado Rockies.
We will not talk about them.
Still nothing. But they are,
No, I can hear me. It says my mic's working.
Talk about them favorably. I wish we could get into them and have some fun topics, but right now it's just more bad from the Colorado Rockies. So we're going to pour our attention into the other teams. We're going to pour attention into the Avs, the Nuggets, and the Denver Broncos. And I think our plan was to start out up top with the Colorado Avalanche. Few bits of news. Starting with Cale Makar. Cale Makar received the Norris Trophy. Second time after having, I believe it was 92 points last season. Yeah, 92 points, 30 goals, 62 assists, plus 28 on the season in 80 games. Became the 9th defenseman in NHL history to score at least 30 goals in one season. And the first since Mike Green had 31 for the Washington Capitals in 08-09. So it's been a good long while since anyone has kind of held up to that standard for defensemen. And it's really a special thing. We have the benefit of having Nathan MacKinnon, who's one of the best offensive players, in league history, definitely in franchise history. And you pair that with one of the best offensive defensemen, and to say that, I don't want to take away from his defensive prowess, because he is a great defender too. And so just really cool to see him win that again. I think with the way the season ended, was a bit heartbreaking. We felt here, at least we felt it as though the Avs could win it all. And, obviously Mikko Rantanen had something to say about that and put his stamp on that series, unfortunately. But with hockey well out of mind, it's nice to be reminded that there's still a lot of upside on this team. There's still a lot of talent. And Cale Makar is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to that. Obviously, entering his prime, 26 years old, it's a really amazing time to have kind of two of the top players in the league on the same team. We just got to get the guys to walk alongside them. And part of that is what we want to talk about too. Another piece of news is that the Avs extended Brock Nelson, decided to extend him. I think that it was a 3-year contract extension, $7.5 million. I got mixed feelings on this. I got mixed reactions kind of going through Twitter. It was one of those things where some people thought it was an overpay. Some people think it's a bit of an odd fit, after last season. Nelson had some good games, but really kind of didn't seem to ever fully gel with his line mates. And that second center position, has just not really been filled by anyone that has really worked yet, to be honest. We are kind of constantly searching. We had Middlestat, and he did some good things. He was good as a playmaker, not necessarily as a scorer for us, but as a playmaker, facilitator. But ultimately they wanted someone stronger, especially as far as goal scoring goes, and so they brought in Nelson, who just kind of hasn't really fit the bill so far. But he is a talented player. He's a guy who has some experience in this league and has some years left to give to the sport, and I think that he can work. It's just a matter of finding that line and those teammates that work best with him. And I think it's just going to take some experimenting. I think some of the people that push back on this, I think, are making the assumption, and probably rightfully so, that just means that we're going to see some other players walk, or just get outbid in free agency, which is a possibility. It's just a matter of we just got to see what happens, right?
Yeah. But are you excited about it?
We can be hopeful that it can work. He is a good player. He's had great production in this league. I don't think that you just lose that overnight, and I think more of it has to do with getting used to a style and getting used to a system, and that takes time. Getting used to new teammates. I think it was pretty well established that when he left the Islanders, that was going to be a tough transition for him. He'd been his whole career, and it just, for whatever reason, hadn't quite clicked at the way that Avs fans and probably the front office were hoping at that point in time. But I am interested. I don't necessarily think it's a bad move. I am curious to see if it turns out to be something that will work out in the long term. But I think the biggest kind of hesitancy I saw was people saying, well, then if we re-signed Nelson, that probably means we lose Jonathan Drouin, which is a possibility. And that's tough. Drouin really kind of revived his career here. He revived his he'd always been kind of well as a minor league player and someone that had high expectations coming into the league and just hadn't quite lived up to it. But for whatever reason, it just never panned out. And then when he got here and him and Nate started playing a little bit together, they found some chemistry from yesteryear and were able to pull it together a little bit. So it will be sad if that is the case, assuming probably that is the case just due to the cap restriction and the tight bottom line that the Avs kind of have to work with there. Saw Net just come up in trade rumors, so there's possibility that they end up moving someone to keep someone like Drouin. I don't know that I love that, but you've really got to be creative with the roster and the space that you have, and sometimes that means you got to ship off other pieces to create space and get guys that you think may be a better fit for your team. Time will tell. Time will tell on that one. It's tricky. I think we all feel like the Avs are in a window, and I think they'll continue to be in a window as long as Makar and McKinnon are playing the way that they're playing. But you look at teams like the Oilers, and you look at teams like the Panthers, who are in the finals right now, and they look to be on a different level. They just do. I don't know what you attribute to that. Maybe it's a style change that needs to happen. Maybe I know that Doc was more adamant about potentially making a change at the head coach position, which is something that they'll have to assess this season as the season goes along. I think Bednar was great for this team, but as we saw with Michael Malone, sometimes the voice can get stale. Sometimes doing the same thing over and over and not yielding different results is a little like insanity. And so we have to get through portions of the season and reassess and just see what happens. So I think that's most of the Colorado Avalanche news. I think we can all still be pretty optimistic about this team and about where it's headed. But I think there's a lot of question marks too. Part of us kind of always kind of reassessing where these teams stand, including the Nuggets and the Broncos, and we'll get into them as well, is just how far away are these teams? And I don't feel that the Avs are far away. I don't feel that the Nuggets are far away. I don't feel like the Broncos are far away, but it feels like maybe your Avs and your Nuggets have less momentum than a team like the Broncos. They have the Broncos have constructed a young roster with an experienced coach. They have forward momentum. They are coming off a really good season where expectations were, I won't say low, but lower than I would say they outplayed their expectations for sure. Now we're kind of coming into a season where the expectations are probably right on par where what they should be. And we have to see if some of these guys will take some steps and improve, And I think that the way that the Avalanche are constructed, they're going to need some of those young guys to step up. They're going to need a Logan O'Connor to take another step. They're going to need your Parker Kelly to take another step. Guys like that that have been consistent fourth and third line guys to up their top end a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to see them become 30 goal scorers, 30 goal scorers, but we need them to take another step, be more productive, do better with their special teams, that sort of thing. And so time will tell, but we are going to be keeping an eye on that and seeing what kind of changes in the future for them. But very cool for Makar, obviously as a longtime Colorado sports fan, Denver sports fan, a guy like Makar, you hope is with the franchise forever. And we've seen that, especially with the Avalanche, that we've had a lot of guys come here and end up finishing their careers, the Joe Sakic's, the Milan Hayduks of the world. And, hopefully Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon are of the same ilk. So anytime we get any of those guys with recognition like that on a national scale, a league-wide award, it's special. It's thing, even in the season that maybe we feel disappointed about the outcome, it's a positive, and it's something that we are going to look back on, years from now and say, man, we had one of the best defensive players in the league, if not the best, for a period of time, and matched with one of the best, if not the best offensive player in the league. So, we just want to see them yield those results, get those cups, and see what we can do. But we will transition then from the Avalanche to the Nuggets. And the idea around this, there's not really anything new around the Nuggets per se, but the playoffs have kind of progressed. The playoffs are into the finals with Oklahoma City and the Indiana Pacers. And I just kind of wanted to do a reflection, right? When we got booted from, we being the Nuggets got booted from the playoffs, it felt a bit defeating. It felt like Michael Malone and Calvin Booth are out. There's a lot of uncertainty around the team. There is a lot of media and fans kind of perpetuating this idea that the roster needs to be shaken up. With the lack of draft picks and assets that this team has, that maybe we just need to reset a little bit. Maybe that means shipping off an MPJ, a Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon, something like that, or a combination those players. I just wanted to come back and just look at that series, look at the finals where it's at now, and see if we feel like we're still that far away. Personally, I think that they are close still. I think that the window is still open with the current roster. I think they need to make some changes, as far as depth goes. I think they potentially need to tinker with the starting lineup a little bit, whether that means making a trade. I think the most obvious change that you could make is moving out MPJ, just someone who has at least had been considered to have decent upside, someone who could be a really great, in his draft class, maybe the best player in that draft class if he wasn't injured. And obviously that's a big if, because he was, and they were significant injuries, and he's kind of molded his career around being able to fight through those injuries and kind of the troubles he's had with those. And so I think that's kind of your natural thought is, okay, we've paid this guy a max contract at the time, and what kind of production are we getting from him? How does he change the landscape of a playoff series, or does he? Is it the right move to get rid of the best shooter on the team, arguably, and bring in other guys who may not be quite as talented in that area, but might get a little bit more depth? And I think that just kind of watching the finals, I think the narrative will shift a little bit, especially if Oklahoma City ends up winning. But even if the Pacers somehow pull it out, I think that there will be less conversation moving forward about shortened benches. And not to say that you have to have a long bench in the playoffs, but I think we're getting to, especially with the Nuggets in particular, with a superstar like Jokic, we saw a lot more yield in production out of his game when he had time to rest in the middle of the game, in the middle of a series, per se. I think that maybe it's been understated, the value of having a sixth, seventh, eighth guy in the playoffs. Someone who can come in, give decent minutes, not just 5 minutes to let your superstar sit for 5 minutes and get him back in there. Someone who can give you, 10 to 12 to 15 minutes in a series that is a bit of a dogfight. To be honest, I don't know that we'll see any rules change to how Nikola Jokic is guarded. I think that if you watch the finals, if you've watched the playoffs outside of the series against the Clippers and OKC, the way that they officiate against Jokic and the way that they officiate against other guys, it's just different. It just is. The way they allow smaller players to defend him is different. And so that requires him to put out a lot more effort. It requires him to get beat on a lot more, to take more physical punishment. It's a tough position to be put in, to have that kind of superstar if you don't have someone who can at least get him out of the game for a period of time that is manageable, and they're not completely falling apart as a team. And so the Nuggets have yet to find that. I'm hopeful that they can. I think it will require them to make some moves or to be more aggressive with their lineups, or maybe not more aggressive, but more intentional about getting guys in, developing young guys. I think that's still got to be part of the process, as much as Calvin Booth maybe relied on that as the principal too much. It's still something that this team has to take into consideration. It's something that they have to be aware of. This is it's going to be a process, and everyone's got to be able to contribute. I think that when we look back at that 2023 championship team, you look at that roster up and down, and whether it was, someone who in the starting lineup that was getting the bulk of the minutes, or it was someone down on the end of the bench, they in practice, in games, had impact. And so I think they've got to look at that roster, decide if this person can be impactful and to what degree. And if not, then they need to move on, and they need to figure out what the best the route forward is. Is a Hunter Tyson worth keeping on the roster? Not to single anyone out, but just as an example, right? Like these guys that are a little bit further down, if you're not convinced that they can step in and into a team that has championship aspirations and give you any significant time, then you really have to assess what their value is on that roster. And I think they'll have to do that with a number of guys. And I think they still have to see that from a number of guys. It doesn't necessarily just say, okay, this is the body of work to this point, but what are we doing to progress these kids if we think that they are going to be, if they're going to be able to give something down the line to contribute to the winning of this team, whether that be minutes in the regular season to give additional rest to your superstars, or that be minutes in a playoff series that that can spell some of those, whether it be an injury or anything else, that we can give these guys some time to recover. The fact that we had no one to really come into the starting lineup when MPJ's shoulder was pretty significantly hurt is tough, right? You don't have that faith in Peyton Watson that he can come in and fill in a role, even if it looks different than what MPJ is doing, to come in and fill in that spot and be as productive and keep you in games as well as having a hurt MPJ out there is. And I just don't know that is the recipe for winning, right? You need to have guys that, whether that's young guys or veteran guys, you've got to have guys that you feel like you can plug into that rotation that can go in and play and be productive and make the right decisions and execute the offense and the defense, right? And that is as much feels like what was missing on this team is that depth, right? And I think what we will see them move, or the conversation, I think, will move away from, oh, you need 7 good guys in the playoffs, to no, it's really beneficial to have 8 or 9 good guys. I mean, you look at OKC and the rotations that they're able to throw out there, and the specialized rotations they're able to throw out there. If they need a bigger lineup, they can throw out Chet and Hartenstein. If they need a smaller lineup, then maybe they keep Hartenstein on the bench and he doesn't play quite as much, and Chet plays your center because he's more mobile and a better rim protector. Or maybe you get a lineup of guys on offense if you need shooting that, Chet can still be your center from the outside, and you put a bunch of shooters out there. It really allows you to be more dynamic with the way that you attack a game plan. It's not, okay, this is our offense and we execute at a high level, but it doesn't vary very much. I think we'll see probably more teams, especially now that we're moving away from the super team era. We'll see more teams pushing towards systems and rotations and different types of lineups. And I think it's interesting evolution of the league. I feel good about where the Nuggets are still, as difficult as it is. I think Adelman showed that he's a capable coach. I think that he he cut his teeth a little bit in those playoff series. He showed that he can adapt and change, and he's not beholden to a certain lineup. And if they need to shake things up a little bit, that he can do that. And so I'm interested with his voice. It does seem very different than Michael Malone's voice, and I think that that's a really positive thing. Obviously, you don't want to replace replace Michael Malone with the Michael Malone clone. There's a reason they moved away from that voice. And up until this point, it looks like Adelman's making some significant changes with his coaching staff as well. A number of guys were let go. And so it'll be interesting to see what type of staff he brings in, what their focus will be, what their, will we get some more established guys, or will we get some young up and comers that have new ideas and fresh ideas, fresh schemes, new things to try. Same with the GM. Are we going to go after someone who's well established and we feel like can squeeze everything out of this roster that they can with the cap space and few assets that they have, or are we going with someone young that maybe is less experienced and has less connections, but is well regarded and will fit well with a young coach, not necessarily super young, but an inexperienced head coach in the NBA. And so there's a lot to look at and a lot for them to consider. But I think ultimately you're still close. You took OKC to 7 games. There were 2 games that got away from you for sure. And there's a game in game 5 that, man, if you just keep your foot on the gas, or maybe those guys have a few more minutes of rest, those starters have a few more minutes of rest, you come out and steal that one, and then maybe the Nuggets look like they're the favorites in the finals and not OKC. And so I don't know. It's hard. It's a tough place to be, right? It's a tough place for a team to be. You've won one, but you've had 2 years in a row where the outcome hasn't been what you wanted it to be. And so now you have to shift, and that gets really difficult. And some difficult moves are going to have to be made, and some difficult discussions are going to have be had. I think the only thing that the only thing that anyone coming in could do to lose the fan base is trade Nikola Jokic. I don't think that that's going to be an option. I would hope that would never be an option, considering how much he's given to this team, what kind of superstar he is, what kind of superstar you would love to have to represent your franchise, and just being an upper echelon NBA player of all time. I don't think those are guys that you move off of, especially in their prime. And so will we see moves? Probably. Most certainly there will be some moves. It's just a matter of how big those moves are and what you get, what you yield in those moves. I'm curious. I'm a bit skeptical. I'm a bit skeptical of how they brought in Adelman before choosing a GM. I understand that if you think the guy's in the building, then you sign that guy. I don't have an issue with Adelman. I like Adelman, actually. I was hoping that he would at least get a fair shot at earning that job. I just am a little bit surprised that they signed the coach before they signed the GM. It's just, usually you want to build from the top down and or from the bottom up, not the top down. And so I think your foundation is going to be Adelman. I mean, your GM, not your coach necessarily, but
well, if he got picked first,
it's an interesting
when
kind of reflective period for Nuggets fans. Doc, I see you're back. I still don't hear you. Maybe other people can hear you.
I think that it's on you. I think it's you. Actually.
I like this. Kona Spence. Hey, dude, I must be drinking the wrong beers right now because my eyesight is off since we can't see you on the screen. You know what that means. Time to drink more Kona. Yeah.
Let's go.
Drink more. Maybe it's me, Doc.
Let's go. I think it's you, bro.
I'll stop talking. You talk, and let me see if it's something with my audio, because if it's saying that it's working, it's probably working, and I've probably just been talking over you the whole time. So,
well,
try it. Let's see. Maybe someone can let us know in the comments too if it's me or if it's a lack of audio on his end.
What a cluster!
We're doing our best here. This is a project, a passion project. This isn't we don't have producers. we do this, and sometimes what I've been doing stops working, and I don't have a camera, and now I have to find a mic, and I don't have any visual. So it's we're doing our best around here, but we appreciate you tuning in anyways. Doc, how are we doing? Let me see if I can figure this out. I'm about to mute just for a second. Hello? Anything? Are you there? Try talking if you haven't tried talking. Nope, he's gone. All right, well, we'll keep rolling on. No worries. Just trying to get this taken care of. Sorry, guys, for the different looking format today. Like I said, we don't have a budget necessarily for this, and so we have to pay out of pocket for these things. And sometimes, as much as I'd like to spend on some new equipment, it just isn't in the cards at the moment. So we appreciate your patience with all this, and we're doing our best. But we're going to talk. Let's talk about what you guys came here to talk about, and that is, and we know, as much as we love all of our sports teams, this is Denver Bronco country. This is a football town, and we know that's what you came here for. And most notably, yesterday, the Denver Broncos signed former Ohio State Buckeye and former Baltimore Raven and former LA Charger J.K. Dobbins to the squad. I think that I view it as a positive move. Dobbins, he ended the season hurt, I'm pretty sure, last season. But arguably one of his healthier seasons to date. No season-ending injuries, thankfully, for him. And there's just a consistency there, right? When he's healthy, he produces, and we've seen that in his time in the NFL. We've seen him put up good yardage with Baltimore. We've seen him put up good yardage with LA. And I hear you now.
Yay! Well,
yay!
Apparently, I'm running off.
Uh-oh. You're choppy.
I'm vacating. It's just a mess. God.
Yeah. It is. It goes that way sometimes.
You can do.
We're just doing our best.
God. But we're troubleshoot. You hope for the best out here.
Yeah. So I was just talking about J.K. Dobbins, and so I haven't talked much about it. Just
missed all the stuff, so that's good.
Yeah, I think that it's just another good, talented body for this roster, especially. And I think we had talked about liking obviously the RJ Harvey addition in the draft, but still feeling maybe like we're missing a vet or someone who can be consistently productive. And I think that J.K. Dobbins, as long as he's healthy, has the potential to do that.
He's the proven vet. It's the floor, one room where, a team probably. Maybe outside of punter, which outside of that, there's proven guys in every room. And the running back, it's production. And, it's not like you got overall rookie coming into the season projection. It's Audric Estime, who apparently, I think there's some maturity stuff. When you come in at 20, you want to be like the dude. They want him to focus on running dudes over. He's trying to hurdle dudes. So that makes sense for that. You got J.K. Dobbins from the Ohio State, who
that's right, baby,
is a pro, right? Played with Baltimore, played with LA, as you were saying when I popped back in. Those are both grown man outfits, right?
For sure.
So the Harbaugh brothers, you got to be able to block. It's a physical style of play that they had. And so, it was his career high in attempts and yards, 9 touchdowns, tied a career high from his rookie season. Also had 32 catches. So, I'm bummed because it'll take away from RJ Harvey's production.
For sure. But
less bummed because if J.K. Dobbins is playing, that means he's producing. You're not going to keep a vet who you're going to have to hit financial incentives in the lineup and on the roster if he's not playing well. Right. So that would be a guy that they'd cut, you cut your losses. You don't want him to hit his marker, so you're not paying him. But I'm for it. Right. I wanted J.K. Dobbins actually at the beginning of free agency, I was hopeful. And then as it went on, it was like, oh man, this guy's going to get peanuts, you know? I mean, relative peanuts, not me and you peanuts, but like NFL peanuts.
Right.
And so, you know, getting a $2.5 million deal, incentives to go, it's like incentives to get up about 5 million, 5.3, I think, about 2 million of that. So to get in like the high 4 is possible if he stays healthy and plays 14 to 15 games. There's some good money on the table for him. And so I think there's added incentive, and not that he's a dude that, I don't know his toughness. I haven't followed, you know, what his locker room mates would say. But if there's an incentive to like, hey man, you might want to gut out that tweak. That's a lot of millions, you know, to do it. So to me, it's like where's the weak spot in the roster now?
Right.
Right. And I would still probably say the running back room, but I sure feel much better about it being, you know, you got J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey as your 1-2 punch. And they're pretty similar, you know. I think J.K. is like 5'10", 5'11". He's a little thicker, but they're both, you know, smaller, stout guys, you know, can catch, you know, you're giving away hopefully what you're doing on the field versus the other guys. You know, Juliel's not standing in a block. Audrick's not running a wheel route. You know, like, all right, we got to give up, got to give away what we're doing. So now that you have that, then kind of whoever fills in, I think you have maybe a truer competition for the 3rd and 4th running back spots. You know, maybe a guy that is better on special teams because, you know, you feel good that you got guys that can, you know, in any one game can carry the ball 20 times at your 1 and 2 spots. So, and that fits Sean Payton's role. Sean Payton wants 2 guys, really, you know, 60%, 40%, or, you know, 50, 30. And then you got your Taysom Hill, you know, your Darren Sproles, who's going to get the swing passes, that kind of stuff, Jaleel. So I like where things are at. I wouldn't be shocked if, you know, when roster cuts happen, that this room still wouldn't add another player, especially a vet, if you can get a vet on a min deal. I like, because I really like Jaleel. I think though, for a guy, right, so he's undersized, you got to have a plus trait. You know, we've talked about it in the NBA. We talk about the Nuggets. Like, if you add someone, they have to do something really, really, really well, especially if they're not really good at other stuff. And so Jaleel isn't super fast, but he's 5'8" and a $180. You know, that's me. If you're not super fast at that size, like, it's cute, but that's that. When you're a good team, those guys don't make the roster. The Broncos haven't been a good team, and now they're a good team. A guy like Jaleel, to no fault of his own, he belongs in the league. Just as you're a better, deeper team, he gets squeezed out of a team like this. So, though I don't think that they should be done, I like it. It's interesting that it happened right after Nick Chubb signed his deal. For essentially like the same deal. It's kind of like a DT and Des Bryant when they had their deals like 9 minutes after each other. Like, I wonder if there were some conversations between those fellas.
Right.
To me, it's kind of the last roster domino. And one thing I think, and I don't know, I apologize to everyone for all of the stuff, but the cool thing about camp through OTAs and through mini camp, the first few days. So again, this portion is mandatory. So you got essentially all the guys out, right? And I think they had a 90% attendance at the OTAs, which is pretty damn good. Anytime I have optional, I don't care how much you think you have on the line. If guys don't have to come to stuff, and I mean that's soccer practice, that's whatever it might be, your rec leagues, you know, all the stuff. We haven't really heard like, Bo Nix had a good day today. It's just nothing, because you expect, you know, I heard a little bit. Yesterday was a little more of a rougher day, not a bad day, but definitely a noticeable below his clip. That's the first thing I've heard from like 11 practices, which to me, I don't know about you, that's awesome. I'm so tired of hearing like, let's grade the day. Who won the day? Who won the week? Is he gonna having all of those things? And even when Russ was here, right, there was some concern about how the other guys looked in comparison. How quick was he picking up the offense? How quick? All of the things. Like, geez, like just the silence is deafening right now. It's a little. Hopefully, we're not getting lulled to sleep. But the fact that like he seems in charge, he's running the show. This is what it's like when Peyton Manning was here. You're not hearing about the stuff that Peyton, like the nuances, the stuff. Yep. You showed up. You can focus on the Caleb Aloner. You know that DeAndre Tillman has had a really phenomenal camp. Like Q Robinson has looked really, really good.
Yep.
Which it should be, right? Like ideally, we should be talking about the guys that either are new to the team, you know, and how they acclimating. Guys come back from injury or rookies, and it's nice because now we're like the good teams. You know, that they focus on those things, and that's what you hear. And so I think it's also telling that they signed J.K. Dobbins after, you know, the first practice of mandatory minicamp. They had him in right after the last OTAs. I think they weren't happy with the room. And I appreciate that they didn't dick around. You know, they said, we don't like the room. Let's go give J.K. 2 point whatever, and, you know, we'll build out a reasonable contract. You know, they did the same thing with Ingram. You know, they said, all right, we want you, like, what's your, and they met his asking price. They didn't whittle him down. And the same thing with JK within reason. I don't think what JK wanted at the start of free agency is what he got now. But it's more than, it's a good shot more than he would have got if he stayed under the weird tender that the Chargers did. So it gave him more money than nothing, or that they had to even make it $1 over, you know, the other pitch. So now that room's good, you know, this is Marie, and you'll pour water on it because you're a wet blanket, that's for sure. But why not? Why not the Broncos, right? The year that the Bengals made it. I don't even think that was like Joe Burrow's best season. Obviously, last year he was Darth Vader out there,
for sure. But
a team that, you know, that played above its head, and, you know, when you just have good chemistry and grit, some really good things can happen. And it's year 2 for Bo Nix in this system. It's year 3 for a lot of the vets, including, I think, all of the offensive line. Even Wattenberg, right? It's his 3rd year, second starter, but 3rd year. Everyone else, it's their 3rd year in this system. Even defensively, you know, you got Vance Joseph's 3rd year in this system. A continuity, a pretty deep team that's widely recognized, I think, across the NFL, right? That they are a favorite to make it back to the postseason. I think anytime that you're favorite to get back at least to the postseason, you know, you're in the top 3rd of the NFL. And so with that, you know, why not? You know, not that I'm predicting a Super Bowl victory yet, for sure. But really, you know, it's not like J.K. Dobbins is the trump card in a game of spades, but that's kind of the last little piece to like raise the floor. So even if the room now was a 6 out of 10 before, I'd say at least a 7.5, considering what we think. Maybe a 7. That's worst room. You know, what's the ceiling? And so I'm super excited. Like this season can start soon enough, because they're playing, and like, nah, we're not going to talk about the Rockies. We're not. I mean, just the only reason why they're on anything is their utility, which makes me so frustrated on all the things. But we're going to talk about teams that deserve it, teams that are, you know, good ownership. You see what the difference is, you know, where the Broncos have a top class organization, they're winning, and how quickly that catches on. You know, like, it's, you know, a lot of places have the Broncos winning the division, you know, and 2 really solid, probably playoff teams with them, and the Chargers and Chiefs, and the Raiders team will be much improved. So with all of those things in there, I think that this move was kind of the, you know, barring injury, knock, or, you know, when cuts happen and things like that, like, yep, if you can, you know, bring them in, your roster's never set. but where's the hole? Like
Sure.
Hunter, you know, like
Yeah. I mean, it's a valid question. I don't know that there's any significant holes. You know, if you look at this team, I think you can probably point out some positions where you're like, yeah, I don't know. Like you mentioned, like, you know, could our center be better? Potentially. You know, could we have a you know, who we don't know what
but
the
even like at
secondary
one
looks like.
position, I mean, just the room.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I would even say he's a top 10 center if you look at all of the, you know, all the metrics. To us, it's like a little in pass pro, he was top 3.
Right.
To me, it's a little like you could, Nick, like because it's depth, but I'd even say like our depth is pretty good. You know, it's probably in
I
that
mean,
running back room that would be it again.
it's
Like
definitely
maybe
improved.
the depth isn't there, but you look at corner, right? If they cut J Matt right now, he'd be on the trade market. You know, like deals and all that stuff. He's going to be your 4th corner. Damari Mathis, who I bet could start for a handful of teams right now, will be your 4th corner probably if he makes the team. And so just with that, we haven't felt like this in a while. Where, to be honest, I think all of us are okay with the running backs being going into camp. I think we all realize it would have been nice, but like you NFL teams or salary cap sports, you can never have a perfect. Like you're never going to be right like the 08 years where you're just or the Dodgers spilling money out of their eyeballs because they're the cap. You can only sign so many people. Guys want to get paid. There will always be an area where you have to do less with more. And so I look at this roster, and you know I don't find an area about like, man, if this area could just a little bit. And I know we're going to talk about receivers. I don't know if you started in on that, but I think maybe
not yet.
Maybe lack of provenness. Maybe that's the one that we can chat about because and I think receiver room is. I think most people, at least within this market, the Broncos feel like that receiver room is just fine. It's that. Those are the 2 positions where if you had to worry about like underperformance, in my opinion, do you agree about that? And then if so, you want to chop up the wide receiver room a little bit because there's been some guys that have been flashing that guys we.
Yeah, well, let's let me. I just want to respond to the running back thing. I think it was pretty well documented that we felt like maybe they were a body short in that room, and so the J.K. Dobbins addition was big. You know, it's not just big because they added another body, but it's big because they added a productive body, someone who's played, like you said, played for teams that don't mess around, that are competitive year after year, that have coaches that are interested in winning and play a certain style. And you know, really the only thing that's gotten in his way of being a good, like a really good pro is injury. And that's just something, you know, all players have to deal with to differing, to different levels, but
it's not matter if, it's a matter when, right? Like no one makes it through that.
Right. Exactly. And so it's just the fact that we have, maybe he ends up being a little bit fragile, which is a possibility. But then you have an RJ Harvey back there, and then you have an Estimate if you believe that he's a guy that can be a producer in this league. I think that we both have our hesitancy with Estimate, and so for them to bring on another body, someone who showed that they can run between the tackles, get tough yardage, can catch the ball, that is maybe has a little more to their game overall. I just think it's just something that they needed to do to kind of keep pace. I mean, it's interesting. Let's talk about running backs just a little bit longer if that's cool, and then we'll run to the receivers. But if you look at the running back rooms in this division, you know, I think you could argue that the Broncos are in just as good shape, if not better shape, than some of the teams in the division. You know, Omarion Hampton,
you know what?
Najee Harris,
you were
with LA,
I think you're onto something, man.
is probably the best upside one. But you've got Isaiah Pacheco coming off injury, Kareem Hunt, who's up there in age. You know, they got Brashard Smith, but I
Did
think
they sign him again? Is he there still?
Oh, Kareem Hunt.
I trust you.
I think so. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure, but if not, they've got.
Yeah, I mean,
Brashard
we all
Smith.
know he's going to end his way back there. They got a
Right.
relationship. Like, there's no way yeah, for sure. Okay, sorry, keep going.
And then the Raiders, you know, maybe have the best upside guy with Genty, but they signed Raheem Mostert, who's been injured, who can be productive. You know, I don't know that anyone's heads and tails ahead of us in that room in this division at the very least. And I don't know. It makes me feel better if we had just walked into training camp with the roster that we had, with the room that we had there. I wouldn't be saying that, but with the addition of Dobbins, assuming he is going to be somewhat healthy and give you some production, I think we all feel that that Harvey is gonna be productive. You know, I think that this offense feels a lot more balanced all of a sudden, and it's a nice feeling to have after a kind of dumpster fire running back room last year. You know, seeing if we had anything left with Javonte, seeing what some of these young guys have with McLaughlin and Batty and or Bidet and everyone, you know, just seeing like who can we squeeze some yardage out that seems like they can be a professional level back. And now we feel like we have two in the room that
and having to do more with less because of Russ's salary cap. Yep.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm happy
that they made right. Like they that room needed to be the crappy room, and we can only bring in so many guys. And then, I mean, that was bare bones. Yeah, I would agree with you. I really like that take of like the AFC West. I'm kind of looking at the rankings of the running back rooms, right? And it's like, CBS has them. They're in tier 5. The Chiefs are in tier 5. Like injury concerns. Yep, every running back they got is hurt. Up and comers in the Vegas and the Chargers because they both took first round rookies. Like, who knows, you know?
Right.
Najee Harris is an Amari and Hampton comp, which he's a. I would agree. Actually.
Oh, you're cut out a little bit, but I mean, in a way, I think that RJ Harvey's a J.K. Dobbins comp too. You know, it's like they're similar.
Yep, that's what I was saying. Like they have interchangeable skill sets. So
yeah. And so I think that, you know, you're looking for someone who's well-rounded. Now they have two guys that are much more well-rounded than the guys they had previously. We probably hung on this for a little while, but let's jump to running the wide receiver room. A lot of noise out of camp. So mini camp and OTAs so far about Vele, how good he's looked, how he looks to be in good shape, how he is catching the ball. And then also with Bryant, you know, just being a guy that looks like he fits into that room, a guy who looks like he's there to work, and just, you know, just good things all around for that room. I'm wondering if you are feeling that this wide receiver room is ready to compete with some of maybe the top end playoff wide receiver rooms. You know, I think there is a prevailing feeling that the Broncos are up and coming, that they are knocking on the door, but we played the Bills last year and we got stomped. We played the Ravens last year and we got stomped. You know, there was definitely a separation between where the Broncos were last season and those upper echelon teams. You know, and I think part of that, people are wondering if this wide receiver room has enough to kind of keep Bo Nix, you know, give him multiple opportunities to get the ball down the field. And then do they have a guy that's a true number one, or a room that can support an up and coming QB1? And so what are your feelings with this wide receiver room kind of not standing pat, but being pretty similar to last season? Do you see that there's opportunity for growth for that group? Do you think that they can be as competitive as some of the other playoff teams that maybe have some top end wide receiver talent?
Yeah, I know. We'll know that we'll do our, we'll do our reward in the West. We'll do that show later in the summer. Kind of looking at it, same process that you were talking about. At least even just, I mean, Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Rashee Rice, who's coming back from a significant injury. You got Jalen Royals and Sky Moore. I guess, is he still a potential guy in your third year? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I stacked them up with that group. I would say that the Broncos had the edge. And then with the Chargers, you bring back you have Quentin Johnson, who, my man, like, can't catch a football in the sport of football, which is just weird. Trey Harris is a nice addition, but we'll see. Ladd McConkey, I think, was a revelation.
Yeah, he's great.
But I would say that I would take the Broncos room over that room. It's kind of Ladd and some dudes. And then others are Trey Tucker, Jack Beck, Jacoby Myers. Like, Jacoby Myers is pretty solid. Number 2, 3.
Sure.
Yeah, but I would say, to be honest, man, they got the best wide receiver room, at least in the division, with 2 teams probably being playoff teams. So I think it's easy to expect. I think it's fair to expect that Marvin Mims has more of the last half of the season impact than the first half this season. I think there was kind of figuring out the lock combo. It finally clicked. Devon Vele, I think he's learning more about leverage. I think last year he won one. And mind you, I think his RAS score is either like he's a. It's really he was drafted in the 7th round because he went on a mission.
Right.
I was gonna make a joke, and so you're not relying on Pat Bryant, who the other teams are relying on guys like that. I think Pat Bryant is gonna be a dude. I think he. What they need. I think Troy will be another year removed. Looks like he's put on at least like a little bit of muscle with the 6'2", 6'3" frame.
For sure.
And then you add an Ingram, who is a big slot. Like, dude's just a receiver. It is what it is.
Right.
That's pretty damn good room. And I think there's another step, because I think Marvin Mims, even if it's 75% of the flash that he had the last 8 weeks, but over the whole season, he's a 1,000-yard receiver, 8 touchdowns, probably a couple hundred in the jet sweeps, some things like that. I think Troy Franklin, really, it's like if he is, probably 4, 20, 30, 40-yard pass plays season. So if every quarter, each of your receivers gets is able to secure a bomb like that, he provides a different aspect, and especially if you have to respect his hands. I think Devon Vele, in my opinion, probably is right now, it's him, Marvin.
Yeah. Oh, I lost your audio for a second. You there?
Well, fire. Don't answer that. They don't have like a you don't have your alpha and great to them, and they plan on winning in 2025.
Sure. I lost you.
I can't read your facial cues.
Sorry. No, and I'm your audio started cutting out there at the end, so sorry about that. No. Yeah, I know. We were doing so good for a minute. It's just the universe is working against us today. It happens, but we're gonna keep going. I mean, I think the big, and you mentioned him twice at least. I think that this room, there are guys that are, I don't know. I think Cortland's a 1. I think he's clearly this team's 1, but I think that he's a low end 1. I think Marvin Mims is kind of your X factor with that room, right? It's whether he takes another step in his progression and makes this offense a little more explosive, a little more, throw over the top and make a play down the field. Like, I think that's probably what this room is missing most, is just someone who can kind of take the lid off of a defense, and doesn't allow defenses to kind of play downhill as much as they'd like to. And I think we saw that potential with him at the end of the season. I still think that he, I think it's pretty obvious, that he's got a lot of work to do as a receiver to kind of hit that full potential. But, he's a young guy who is going to have time if he, commits to his craft, can learn how to line up kind of more as a prototypical receiver and less as a gadget guy, and be productive on the outside of the offense. And I think, Vele has got great potential to be a great possession receiver. I don't know that he's ever going to be a game breaker, but he's someone that when the play breaks down and you need to get a couple yards to pick up a first down, that he's going to be a great target for Bo Nix if he can kind of continue to keep on pace and progression physically and just kind of as a wide receiver. And then Pat Bryant, I think he's your other potential game breaker type. I think his hands are good enough that, even in tough situations where he's going to have to battle for the ball down the field, I think he has the potential to win those. I don't want to say Odell Beckham Jr. but just kind of a similar feel as far as you put that ball anywhere in his catch radius and there's a good chance he can come down with it. Whether that be one hand, two hands in traffic, over the shoulder. I think that he's got some really good upside. They've just got to continue to cultivate that room. And they just, the biggest thing I think is just that down the field threat. If we can get one or two guys that can give you that threat and kind of spread out that defense a little bit more, then this offense becomes the next level of explosive. And that's something that they need.
Yeah. There's got to be some easy buttons. We talked about it when we went into free agent in the draft. They need guys on 3rd and 6 that you could just dial it up. And you know what? You need a chunk play here. And I think I'm really excited for training camp. I think.
Oh, me too.
Shouldn't take a while to rev up, right? The offense really should be. And we should play early. Just a couple stuff and faster. If Troy Falcon doesn't have to think about much more catchy.
Oh, I think we lost your audio again. Sorry, dude. We're doing good for a second. But no, I just, I think that there's I think camp will be exciting, like you're saying. And I wonder if this will be a year too. And I'll have to get your feel probably after the podcast, or we can talk about it more next week, that maybe this will be the year where we feel a little bit of that chippiness, that offense versus defensive competition level kind of growing between the two squads, because they are going to be a little more evenly matched than they were last season. They are going to be man for man, a little more challenging for that defense to kind of hold down. And so I wonder if we'll see a little bit of that chippiness for the first time in a long time. So camp is really exciting, and it's nice that we don't have to talk about the quarterback position. The battles will be elsewhere. The battles will not be at the quarterback position. And so it'll be a nice change of pace. We know who we're walking into the season with at the key positions. And then, at that point, then you just kind of see where those depth battles happen, see where those, that fourth receiver, that third running back, that second or third interior offensive lineman, like where do those battles end up shaking out? And it's just, it has a different feel, and I'm excited for a different feel. I'm excited for something that feels more like, hey, we're honing in on what this team is, and not, hey, we're figuring out what this team is, right? I think last season was a great tune-up for the team, and I think that they just have to continue to push and take their momentum and move forward with it, right? This is a group of people that came here to win. I know that that's easy to say. I think every team is trying to win in the NFL, but I think especially guys like your Ingram, guys like your Dobbins that come in on shorter contracts that maybe have a little bit of injury history that think that they can contribute on a team that is going to be competitive. And let's see if they can push that unit forward. And I think that it's a fun place to be as a team. But sorry for all of the stuff today, guys. We did our best. It was a uphill battle, but we'll hone in and trying to get all this stuff figured out next week. So if you stuck with us, we appreciate you. If you didn't, we completely understand. We will work on all of the technical difficulties in the week between shows. So thank you for bearing with us. We appreciate you as always. Please be kind to each other. Be safe out there. And we'll see you next time. And if you need a sports prescription, ask a doctor.